The royal war has reached its boiling point. Prince William has drawn the hardest line yet against his own brother, Harry. When Prince William appointed Jason North, a former royal aide who once accused Meghan Markle of bullying, as the new CEO of his green charities, it wasn't just a staffing decision. It was a statement. To insiders, the move was seen as William drawing a clear line in the sand, signaling that he's no longer willing to bend when it comes to Harry and Meghan. Jason North isn't just another aide. He's someone directly tied to the controversies that surrounded Meghan during her time as a working royal. By elevating him to such a visible position, William effectively reminded the world, and especially his brother, that he's not afraid to spotlight the fractures Meghan left behind. For many observers, this was William's way of reclaiming control, not just of his causes, but of the family narrative. Behind palace walls, the reaction was swift. Reports suggest that William's decision wasn't made in isolation. It came after months of private conversations among the senior royals, where frustration with Harry and Meghan had been steadily growing. Their interviews, documentaries, and Harry's memoir spare had already created deep scars. But this appointment pushed things into new territory. To the outside world, it looked like a small organizational update. To those following the royal drama closely, it was the loudest warning yet. William is prepared to go on the offensive. By bringing Jason North into his inner circle, he is not only aligning himself with someone who has first-hand knowledge of Meghan's alleged behavior, but also sending a powerful message that the era of second chances is over. The symbolism is clear. This isn't about family squabbles anymore. It's about William protecting the monarchy he will one day inherit, even if that means sidelining his own brother permanently. To the millions watching Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018, the ceremony looked like a fairy tale. The music, the dress, the chapel, it was a historic moment. But behind the glamour, something happened that only a few sharp eyes noticed. Meghan and Harry walked past Queen Elizabeth without Meghan offering a curtsy. No acknowledgement, no gesture of respect. To the public, it seemed minor. To William, it was the beginning of the end. The curtsy is more than an old-fashioned ritual. It symbolizes respect for the monarchy and the traditions that bind it. Every royal bride before Meghan had followed this protocol, rehearsing every bow and every step until it was second nature. Meghan, an actress who had spent years hitting her marks on screen, surely knew what was expected. So when she didn't curtsy, William didn't see nerves. He saw defiance. From William's perspective, this wasn't just Meghan forgetting a small detail. It was a message, whether intentional or not. She wasn't going to play by the family's rules. What made it worse was Harry's silence. He didn't correct her, didn't guide her through the moment. Instead, he stood by, effectively endorsing her choice. For William, that silence spoke louder than words. Royal insiders later tried to excuse it, calling it nerves or wedding day jitters. But William wasn't convinced. He had already begun to see a pattern. Meghan was not there to adapt, she was there to change the narrative. And Harry, instead of balancing tradition with his wife's independence, was choosing her side over the monarchy's. Looking back now, that missing curtsy feels symbolic. It was the moment William realized his brother's future, and the future of the crown, was heading for collision. After the curtsy incident, William hoped things might smooth over. Maybe Meghan would adapt to royal traditions with time. But soon came another flashpoint, the wedding dress. What seemed like a fairy tale gown to the public carried deep tension behind palace walls. Traditionally, every royal bride involves the queen in the process. Diana, Kate, even Sarah Ferguson all shared sketches or details with Her Majesty as a mark of respect. Meghan, however, didn't. Queen Elizabeth never saw her dress before the wedding, not even a sketch. To the Queen, and certainly to William, this wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. The Queen, known for her discretion, reportedly raised an eyebrow at Meghan's choice to wear bright white despite being divorced. According to royal biographers, Elizabeth privately felt it wasn't appropriate, but Meghan pushed forward, controlling every detail herself. To William, this looked less like independence and more like a deliberate break from custom. It wasn't just about the dress, For William, it was part of a growing pattern. First the curtsy, now the gown, moments where Meghan sidestepped tradition and Harry stood silently by. Then came smaller storms, complaints from staff about Meghan's treatment of them, tension over flower girl dresses that reportedly left Kate in tears, and whispers of Meghan demanding privileges other royals never dared to ask for. Through it all, William noticed one thing: Harry always took Meghan's side. Every time she clashed with palace staff or ignored guidance, Harry defended her choices. What others viewed as newlywed loyalty, William saw as dangerous. His brother wasn't just in love, he was enabling behavior that, in William's eyes, threatened the integrity of the monarchy. This was no longer about small oversights. It was about whether Harry and Meghan would respect the institution William was destined to lead. By the time Meghan and Harry stepped into the global spotlight with their Oprah Winfrey interview, William had already seen enough warning signs. But what came next pushed things to an entirely new level. In that interview, Harry and Meghan openly accused the royal family of racism, a claim that struck at the very heart of the monarchy's image and legacy. To William, this was more than just family airing dirty laundry. The Queen's life's work had been the Commonwealth, a network of nations built on unity across cultures. By suggesting racism within the palace, Harry and Meghan cast doubt on everything the monarchy stood for. And William, who would one day inherit that responsibility, knew the damage could last for decades. Then came the Netflix series, where private family moments were broadcast to millions. Conversations once thought to be personal suddenly became content. And if that wasn't enough, Harry's memoir Spare delivered another blow. The book didn't just criticize the institution, it painted William himself as harsh, temperamental, even violent in private. For William, these weren't isolated attacks. They were part of a pattern. Each public move by Harry and Meghan chipped away at the monarchy's credibility. And worse, each move was fueled by their royal titles. Every headline about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex gave weight to their criticisms. What stung most for William was not Meghan's words, but Harry's. The brother who once stood shoulder to shoulder with him through family grief and public duty was now undermining him on the world stage. To William, this wasn't just betrayal, it was war. And as the scandals piled up, William began to think strategically, not emotionally. If Harry and Meghan wanted to burn bridges, he would make sure they couldn't cross back. At some point, William stopped seeing the rift as a family matter and started treating it as a matter of survival for the monarchy. According to palace insiders, he began pushing for the nuclear option, a clean, permanent break. That meant stripping Harry and Meghan of their titles, severing their official ties, and ensuring they could never use the monarchy's prestige as leverage again. The plan went beyond just the Duke and Duchess titles. William reportedly wanted to address the question of Harry and Meghan's children too. Archie and Lilibet are entitled to HRH titles when William becomes king, but William has no intention of allowing that to happen. For him, the stakes are too high. If Harry and Meghan continue their media deals and tell-all projects, those titles would be weapons, used to give credibility to every revelation, every criticism, every Netflix episode. Behind closed doors, discussions turned serious. A private meeting was planned with King Charles, Queen Camilla, William, and Catherine. No aides, no records, just the decision-makers. The agenda: how to cut Harry and Meghan off completely. But not everyone in the room agreed. Catherine urged caution. She wasn't defending Harry and Meghan, she was protecting William. She feared that once he made this decision, there would be no going back. What if Harry tried to reconcile one day? What if years later the monarchy looked cruel instead of strong? William's response was blunt. We tried. They chose their path. For him, it wasn't revenge. It was damage control. To allow Harry and Meghan to keep their titles was, in his eyes, to hand his critics a loaded weapon. And William was determined not to make that mistake again. If William still had any doubts, Meghan's use of the HRH title erased them. Years after she and Harry had agreed not to use the style of His or Her Royal Highness, Meghan sent a gift basket to a friend in California. Attached was a card signed, "With compliments of HRH, the Duchess of Sussex." To outsiders, it might have seemed like a small slip. But inside the palace, it was seen as deliberate defiance. Someone had to design the card, write those words, and approve it. There was nothing accidental about it. Worse still, the timing was brutal. Just as whispers of possible reconciliation began to circulate, Meghan reminded everyone that she was willing to ignore Queen Elizabeth's final wishes. For William, it was personal. The late Queen had bent over backwards to find a dignified compromise when Harry and Meghan stepped down. To see Meghan undermine that agreement after Elizabeth's death felt like a direct insult to her memory. Palace insiders described William's reaction as furious. But what cut deeper was Harry's silence. He offered no correction, no apology, no reassurance that the breach wouldn't happen again. To William, silence meant approval. It meant Harry was complicit. And that was enough for William to decide there was no trust left to salvage. The HRH incident convinced him that Harry and Meghan would never honor agreements. They wanted the freedom of independence but the prestige of royalty. William realized he couldn't let them have both. If Meghan was willing to weaponize titles against the family, then the only solution was to remove them permanently. It wasn't just protocol anymore. It was about respect, legacy, and protecting the crown from those who, in William's view, no longer cared about it. By 2025, the conflict between the brothers had gone far beyond family arguments. Harry even took his father's government to court over security funding, demanding taxpayer protection whenever he visited Britain. He lost the case, but to William, the damage was already done. This wasn't just Harry fighting for safety. It was Harry challenging the very authority of the crown, and by extension, undermining King Charles in public. For William, it was the final straw. Here was his brother, who had already written a tell-all memoir, aired private family grievances on Netflix, and accused the monarchy of racism, now suing the government his father led. It looked less like concern and more like blackmail, especially when Harry claimed he couldn't bring his family to the UK without full security. To William, it felt like Harry was using Archie and Lilibet as bargaining chips. And yet, the irony cut deep. Months later, Harry returned for an event with only private security. No drama, no state protection. William reportedly asked himself, was Harry exaggerating all along? Either way, the trust was shattered. At this point, William's mind was made up. There could be no reconciliation, no halfway measures. The risk to the monarchy's future was simply too great. For William, allowing Harry back meant inviting chaos, leaks, and betrayal into the very heart of the institution he would one day lead. Catherine, ever the voice of caution, still wonders if they might regret such finality years from now. But William has already hardened. He believes some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. And so, the story of two brothers who once walked side by side has become a lesson in loyalty, legacy, and the cost of betrayal. The royal war, as William sees it, is over. His brother is not coming back,